Alright guys, so the dam is breaking for Joseph Robinette Biden right now. It seems like as the days go on, we are getting more and more defections from donors, from elected officials, from media pundits, from entire news outlets like the New York Times and the AJC, as well as from the American people, the voters broadly, calling on Joe Biden to drop out of the 2024 election after he put his senility on full display for the entire country during the first presidential debate and also before that as well. Now the latest defection that we have here is actually a pretty big deal. You might just initially look at this and say it's just a random celebrity, but no. Okay, so let's get into some of the details here because George Clooney, who co-chaired a fundraiser for President Biden that raised $14 million just a few weeks ago, is calling on him to drop out. So again, this isn't just George Clooney, the actor. This is also George Clooney, one of the single top major Democratic fundraisers. And here's what he had to say in, I believe, a recent op-ed. He says, "It's devastating to say it, but the Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago at the fundraiser was not the Joe Big Effing Deal Biden of 2010. He wasn't even the Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate." One of the other reports that I told you guys about is that apparently at some of these fundraisers, where usually you would just show up, you do some speech, then you go around, you shake some hands, talk to people, etc. He's been using a teleprompter at some of these fundraisers. A teleprompter. A teleprompter is what you use for like a long scripted speech in front of a large crowd or something like that. You don't use a teleprompter in front of fundraisers. I mean, that's just bizarre behavior, right? He continued though, he says, "Our party leaders need to stop telling us that 51 million people didn't see what we just saw. We're all so terrified by the prospect of a second Trump term that we've opted to ignore every warning sign. The George Stephanopoulos interview only reinforced what we saw the week before. As Democrats, we collectively hold our breath to turn or turn down the volume whenever we see the president, Jesus, who we respect, or walk off Air Force One or walk back to a mic to answer an unscripted question." Guys, this is George Clooney. This should be, on paper, one of Joe Biden's top allies. He went on to say, and you can see down here a picture of him with Joe Biden as well as Barack Obama, who he also has very close ties to. He went on to say at a different portion in this op-ed, "We won't win the House, and we're going to lose the Senate. This isn't only my opinion, this is the opinion of every senator and every Congress member and governor that I've spoken with in private. Every single one, irrespective of what he or she is saying in public." So in other words, many of these people, these elected officials, are just lying to the American people. They're gaslighting, or attempting to. I don't think it's working, but attempting to gaslight the American people by saying, no, I'm behind Biden, everything's fine, we're going to win in November, right? But behind closed doors, and this is not the only report that I've seen like this, behind closed doors, George Clooney, many others like David Axelrod backed him up on this reporting. They're saying every single one of these elected officials, behind closed doors, behind the scenes, is saying Biden has no chance. Biden needs to drop out. If we have any chance of not only defeating Donald Trump, but also preventing Republicans from taking the House and the Senate, then we need someone else to step in. This is what they're all saying behind the scenes. Now, again, they're cowards for not coming out and just openly stating what they actually believe. So that's like sort of one angle of it. But the other angle is like, at this point, we're so far beyond the point of no return. Like, there is no coming back from this. I don't think that many of the Biden loyalists or defenders at this point understand the seriousness of the current situation. This is not something that, like, okay, we just need to convince every single person, every single American voter who thinks that he's too old, every single member of the House, every single member of the Senate, and once we convince them to be loyalists and to stay on board, we'll all be fine, we'll push back, we'll pull off a miraculous comeback win. That is not happening, guys. It's not happening. And so, however dangerous you think a Trump administration would be, which I think it would be massively dangerous, but it's going to be even more dangerous if Republicans are able to take, large majorities in the House and the Senate. But that's what's going to happen right now. So in terms of some of the ones who have been, willing to come out and state their opinion publicly, we had Michael Bennett. I think I mentioned this in one of my previous videos. He went on CNN and basically said that Biden just straight up can't win this election. So let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of Michael Bennett We could have had Michael, if only we had supported him in the primary, right, guys? So let's listen to this real quick.
Reported that you, Senator John Tester, and Senator Sherrod Brown all said during that lunch that you don't think President Biden can win in 2024. Is that true?
Well, it's true that I said that, and I did say that behind closed doors, and you guys and others asked whether I'd said it, and that is what I said. So I figured I should come here and say it publicly.
Why do you think you can't win in November?
I just think this race is on a trajectory that is very worrisome if you care about the future of this country. Joe Biden was 9 points up at this time. The last time he was running, Hillary Clinton was 5 points up. This is the first time in more than 20 years that a Republican president has been up in this part of the campaign. Donald Trump is on track, I think, to win this election and maybe win it by a landslide and take with him the Senate and the House. And so for me, this isn't a question about polling. It's not a question about politics. It's a moral question about the future of our country. And I think it's critically important for us to come to grips with what we face if together we put this country on the path of electing Donald Trump again.
So you're worried that you're...
So there you go. And this is exactly what I reported a couple days ago David Axelrod said as well, that Joe Biden is much more likely to lose in a landslide than he is to even squeak out a narrow win. This is what everybody is saying. This is what all of the polling data is saying right now. And again, that is primarily a Joe Biden issue, right? Now, you guys know all of my disagreements with Democrats and the Democratic establishment and all of that. But the fact of the matter is, even swing state Democratic Senate candidates, they are polling significantly ahead of Biden. And I'll show you some of that here in a second, a couple of examples. But this is Joe Biden as an individual. It's not even just a weakness of the Democratic Party brand in general. It's Joe Biden specific. And in his ego-driven insistence to keep himself at the top of the ticket, he's not just dragging down himself. He's dragging down all of these other Democratic candidates with him. And I'm sure that a lot of them are pissed about it behind the scenes. We also had here Seth Moulton. They recently had one of these behind the scenes conversations, and this is what he had to say. Let's listen to this real quick.
I have a very personal relationship with the president, and it was a hard decision to get to this point of speaking out publicly. What I did first was speak to people in private, have conversations with the White House. But when over a course of several days that didn't seem to be going anywhere, I felt it was important to be honest with my constituents, with people who are asking for what my opinion was. But it wasn't an easy decision, and I know a lot of my colleagues are struggling with that right now. We don't want any negative consequences going forward. But the reality, as Senator Bennett said, is that right now we're on a path to losing. And when your strategy isn't working, you can't just double down on the strategy. You have to change your strategy.
I mean, he's right, and here's the unfortunate reality for Joe Biden. There is no winning strategy moving forward from here. You basically have two options. If you're trying to prove to the American people that you're capable of being the president, not only right now, but for the next 4 or 5 years, right? There's two options. Option number one is you try to go and prove to the American people that you can do it by going and doing a bunch of interviews and taking tough questions and, showing your vitality on the stage, right? The issue with that is that every time Joe Biden does an interview, every time Joe Biden goes out and delivers some sort of an unscripted speech or answers questions, he's going to continue to have these old man moments, which is just going to make the situation worse for him. Then the second option for him is he can try to stay away from the interviews and sort of try to hide himself away. But then again, people are going to ask questions of well, why is he hiding? It's because he's hiding due to his senility and that the fact that he can't go out and make these public appearances. And again, the polling data is not good right now. It would be one thing if Biden, even being totally senile, was 15 points ahead of Trump, but that's not the reality. And one of the points that I think Michael Bennett just brought up a few minutes ago is that at this point in 2020, Joe Biden was ahead of Trump by 9 percentage points, guys. 9 percentage points he was ahead. Now he's down, depending on the polling, by 3 to maybe 5%. This is not even at this point a toss-up anymore, guys. It's an obliteration, right? You need, as a Democratic presidential candidate, because of the way that our electoral system works, you probably need to have a 3, 4, 5 point lead in the polls to potentially win. Even when, again, at this point, back in 2020, Biden was up by 9 points in the national polls, but, a few 10,000 votes here and there, and he could have easily lost to Donald Trump. That was still a close election, even though he was 9 points ahead at this point in 2020. Now, the other hilarious part about all of this is that we have had some of these elected officials in the Democratic Party who have been extremely cryptic about what their position is right now. So we heard from Michael Bennett. We heard from Seth Moulton there. They're being pretty open and honest about it. Here's what Tim Kane had to say. He says, I have complete confidence that Joe Biden will do the patriotic thing for the country, and he's going to make that decision. He's never disappointed me. So, like, what do you mean by that, man? What do you mean by the patriotic decision? What does that mean, number one? And number two, why are you acting as if Joe Biden hasn't made his position clear? Joe Biden has been saying repeatedly since the debate, I am the candidate. I am not going anywhere. I'm not dropping out. I'm being defiant. I'm staying. Right? He said the Lord Almighty is the only one that could force him to drop out of the election. So why are you being vague about this? Right? I mean, isn't this just amazing? He'll do the patriotic thing for the country. Well, what is that? Is that staying in? Is that dropping out? He's going to make that decision. Well, he's already made that decision. It's like, it's just so good. We have a number of different examples, very similar to that one here as well. We had Richie Torres, cross comparison here. I'll let you guys read the entire thing if you want. But this is just a couple days between these two statements, right? This one is like, regardless of where one stands on Biden's political future, the mixed messaging strikes me as deeply self-destructive. Those are calling him to withdraw should ask themselves a simple question. What if the president becomes a nominee? Then drip, 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 you're going to hurt him over time, basically. Then we get 2 days later, this statement from the same guy. In determining how to proceed as a party, there must be a serious reckoning with the down ballot effect of whoever we nominate. So now you just completely change your tune, and now you're saying, well, we should take into consideration the fact that Biden is tanking all of the other Democratic candidates, right? And we should basically factor that in when we're deciding who we're going to nominate. So he's talking here as if, like, it's actually not a guarantee that we nominate Joe Biden. Guys, this is Richie Torres. This is not like AOC or Bernie Sanders or some lefty. This is Richie Torres. And by the way, bizarrely, the world that we're living in right now, you have all of these mainstream Democrats who are either putting out vague statements or they're directly saying Biden should drop out. And then you have all these squad members like AOC and Ilhan Omar and then even Bernie and stuff, Ayanna Pressley, who are coming out and saying, no, Biden is the candidate. It's like, what are we doing here, guys? I genuinely have no explanation for how that's possibly happening. You're getting outflanked by all of these guys, right? We also had this here, another cryptic statement from Clyburn, another top Biden ally. In fact, he was extremely influential in helping Joe Biden to win in the 2020 Democratic primary. And he says, I have no idea, says Clyburn, on whether Biden's decision to stay in the race is final. He says, you'll have to ask him. Again, they're acting as if Biden hasn't made this decision yet. The best one here was Nancy Pelosi, doing the exact same thing here. And I'll circle back to Ryan's tweet about what exactly this could mean. Let's listen to this short little Nancy Pelosi clip here. I'll put it on 1.25 speed.
The current moment, does he have your support to be the head of the Democratic ticket?
As long as the president it's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. I think overwhelming support of the caucus. It's not for me to say. I'm not the head of the caucus anymore. But he's beloved. He is respected, and people want him to make that decision.
He has made the decision. He has said firmly this week he is going to run. Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do, and that's the way it is. Whatever he decides, we go with. I think it's really important, and
So what are we doing here, guys? It's like they all got the same messaging at the same time. It's like Democrats basically said after the debate, well, we got to maybe stick by Joe Biden. Maybe he should drop out, but let's just listen to what Joe Biden has to say, and we'll let him make that decision. And then Joe Biden came out, and he was like, my decision is I'm staying in the race. And they were like, well, maybe let's circle back on that. Maybe let's run that decision one more time, please. And then he's like, no, yeah, I actually am staying in the race. I'm not going anywhere. And then now for the third time, Democrats are like, can you maybe rethink that decision? Like one more time? I mean, she was directly asked there the question. Joe Biden has said that he is staying in the race, right? Do you support him as the nominee? And then she immediately goes back again to saying, well, I think he should make that decision. I think it's pretty clear what the implication is of what Nancy Pelosi is trying to say here. This is Nancy Pelosi. You couldn't ask for a better Biden loyalist, Biden defender. And she's being as vague as possible, giving the strong implication that Biden, maybe you need to circle back around and make another decision. And this time the decision needs to be that you're dropping out. That's what she's saying here. Now, it was another interesting point here from Ryan Grimm. He says Pelosi here is basically saying let the NATO leaders leave and then he's done. So I wonder if this could possibly be a small holdup right now for some Democratic officials, is the fact that we have NATO leaders that are in country right now, and so they don't want to come and call on the president to drop out in front of all of these foreign leaders or something like that. I guess that could be part of the explanation. So in a couple days when they leave, maybe then you see more of them just straight up saying Biden needs to drop out. But again, guys, Joe Biden is not getting this message. Clearly, something is not getting through to him because he's been as hardline on this as possible. Right? He's not even saying oh, maybe I'll think about it. He's saying 100% I'm staying in the race. Maybe they're trying to pull a trick on Biden here and sort of abuse his senility. And maybe they're trying to keep asking him the same question, hoping that he forgot. Right? I bet one day maybe they just wake up and they start telling Biden that he already made the decision to drop out. Maybe that's a strategy. Wake up, Mr. President. You have to go make your speech announcing that you're going to allow somebody else to take up the mantle. Maybe he would go along with it. Who knows? Who knows? Just an idea. Now, we also had here from Senator Shaheen. She said this on New Hampshire Today. The president has to make that decision. I believe ultimately he is going to do what's in the best interest of the country. I'm going to give him some time to make that decision. So again, he's made the decision. You're just wanting him to make a different decision. So why can't you just say that? I mean, that's 5 different examples that I just showed you guys of a bunch of Democrats who know for a fact that Biden has already made this decision. And they're saying, let's try it again. Let's run that back one more time. Now, we also had this here from TMZ, and this was actually confirmed by George Stephanopoulos himself after the fact. So this is George, the guy from ABC News, who did the main post-debate interview with Joe Biden. And he was asked on the street, he was just going for a casual walk, I guess. This guy got it on tape. He was asked, do you think that Joe Biden should be the nominee, or do you think that he can, make it? And George Stephanopoulos replied with, I don't think he can make it another term. I don't think he can serve another term. So even the guy, this was supposed to be Joe Biden's comeback interview, right? He was supposed to reaffirm to the American people, look, I'm vigorous, I'm here. That was supposed to be the interview where he proved that. And the guy who interviewed him is saying, no. I don't even think he can serve the next 4 years. We also have CNN hosts, again, mainstream pundits, who are coming out and basically turning on Biden. This was a Jake Tapper segment on CNN where he did what they sometimes do to Trump, where they get a transcript basically of something that Trump said, and then you read from the transcript. So you're taking Trump's charisma and his flair out of whatever he was saying, and then you read it back and you're this is totally incoherent nonsense, right? When you actually see it written on paper. And so he did that with Joe Biden. Let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of this. He played a little short clip from when Biden was rage calling into MSNBC. Let's listen to his response here.
Age wasn't, the idea I'm too old.
The fact of the matter is, how can you assure you're going to be out on your way to go, work tomorrow? Age wasn't, the idea that I'm too old. Keep in mind, that soundbite is supposed to be reassuring to those Democratic supporters who have gone wobbly. Many Democratic officials with whom I've spoken are worried that President Biden and his family and his inner circle appear to be in complete denial, not just about whatever might be wrong with him, but the state of his candidacy right now.
So you lost George Clooney, you lost the New York Times editorial board, you lost the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, you lost David Axelrod. I mean, you've lost Michael Bennett, right? How many more people is it going to take? Jake Tapper? I mean, you guys remember the reaction post-debate of the total and complete, depression, panic, I don't know what you want to call it, from a lot of these mainstream hosts after watching Joe Biden on that stage. I think maybe it was Morning Joe or it was somebody else on MSNBC who right after the debate basically said, listen, there's only so much spin we can do on this, right? Which kind of revealed a lot about what they think their job is, to do spin for the Democratic Party establishment. But when they say things like that, it's basically just saying, yeah, this is such a disaster that I can't even do bullshit propaganda to pretend like it's not there. I mean, these are the mainstream of the mainstream people here, guys. We had this here from Adam Smith, not the old Adam Smith, but the new Adam Smith, Congressman Adam Smith. And he said something pretty interesting. He said, Joe Biden was not picked in 2020 because he was the only person that could beat Trump. He was picked because he was the only person who could beat Bernie Sanders. And this is 100% correct. And the reason I bring this up is because Joe Biden is trying to run with this tagline now that it's just like the deep state elites within the party that are trying to push him out. It's just the donors. When, number one, that's not true, because it's actually a majority of your own party that does want somebody else to step in. But number two, your entire career was built by the elites. That's how you won the Democratic primary in 2020. Do you think that we all just forgot how that went down? When you had Bernie Sanders winning the first 3 states, what was it? New Hampshire, Iowa, Nevada. Then Biden comes back, Clyburn, gets into bat for him, and he wins South Carolina. Then there's this whole media narrative about Biden's the only electable one, right? We have to prevent Bernie from winning the election. Then you have Obama get on the phone. All of these other mainstream Democrats, establishment Democrats, drop out of the race and endorse Joe Biden. He's backed by all of these mega donors. Like, the only reason that you are in the White House right now is because the elites propped you up. It's because they picked you, because they didn't want Bernie. That's how you got to this position in the first place. So you can't then turn around and, suddenly now you're firmly against the elites. This is how you built your entire political career, dude. If you didn't want to be beholden to the powers of the elites, you could have done something about that a long time ago, right? Now, this is also extremely alarming, and it's something I've mentioned before, about the influence of Biden's family on what's going to happen moving forward, right? So they say here from this excerpt, I think it's from the New York Times, his family is standing with him, his wife Jill and his sister Valerie, who Democrats relied upon to provide wise counsel, not just cheerleading. His son Hunter has been seen at the White House so much lately that one well-connected lawyer and lobbyist Democrat dubbed him the acting chief of staff. He's the gatekeeper. He's the one who's bucking up his dad. So we might actually get a second Trump administration with Republicans in control of the House and the Senate. Because what exactly? Because Jill and fucking Hunter Biden are basically acting as Joe Biden's cheerleaders right now. This is why we're going to get stuck with Biden, is because of his own ego and his immediate family that clearly has some sort of incentive to want him to stay in positions of power. This is what we're doing now. Hunter Biden is the gatekeeper for Joe Biden right now. It's amazing. This is just an amazing timeline we're living in right now. So in terms of how disastrous the polling data is at the moment, there's a new Cook Political rating, and they are shifting 6 electoral college ratings towards Republicans. We got Arizona went from a toss-up to a lean Republican. Georgia went from a toss-up to a lean Republican. Minnesota went from likely D to lean D. The New England 2nd District went from likely D to lean D. New Hampshire, likely D to lean D. And then Nevada went from toss-up to lean Republican. And this is what we've been consistently seeing with all of these new post-debate polls that have been coming out. Trump is leading pretty much in every single swing state. The national polls have swung at least a little bit in his favor as well. And as of right now, unless something absolutely massive changes, Joe Biden is just going to get obliterated. That's just what's going to happen. Maybe there's a 20%, 10% chance he pulls off some heroic win because people just hate Trump so much, right? There's a chance for that. But is that really something that people want to risk right now? Instead of just replacing Biden? This really should not be controversial at this point. I don't think anybody actually believes at this point that Joe Biden can be the president for the next 5 years. Does anybody believe that? Do people really believe he's going to be alive in the next 4 or 5 years? I mean, it might sound dark to say that, but I think it's darker to keep him in this position, given what we've all seen from him. Now, another example here in terms of how he's dragging other candidates down and how far ahead other Democrats are in swing states. So here in Wisconsin, this was a post-debate poll. Trump is ahead of Biden by 6 percentage points in Wisconsin. 6 percentage points. And then the Democrat in the race, Baldwin, is up by 5 against the Republican. So basically, I mean, there's almost what is that? An 11-point swing between how Joe Biden is doing versus how the Senate Democrat is doing. This is basically every single swing state is like this, guys, where Joe Biden is trailing the Senate Democratic candidate by a massive margin. Again, it's not necessarily an issue with the Democratic Party's brand. It's an issue with Joe Biden specifically. Now, we move on. It's gotten so bad because apparently New York might be in play. New York. Are we kidding? Are we kidding? Now, granted, I don't know the odds of this actually happening. I kind of doubt that even as abysmal as it is right now, that Trump would actually win New York. But the fact that this is even a question, that we have headlines here from mainstream outlets, this is from the Associated Press, saying, we're a battleground state now. In New York, this is one of the Democratic strongholds in terms of the Electoral College. Hard to see how it could possibly get worse from here. And I'll finish off with this. There was a headline here in the New York Times that just perfectly encapsulates the Democratic Party as a whole. On Capitol Hill, Democrats panic about Biden but do nothing. You could replace Biden here, you could wipe that out, and substitute this word with basically anything. And substitute it in any moment. And this would apply to the Democratic Party. On Capitol Hill, Democrats panic about blank but do nothing. This is the Democratic Party in a nutshell. At some point, something's got to break. Right? You have to absolutely do something about this or you're all fucked. That's just the reality right now. And here's another idea that I thought was interesting. Here from Nova Wine Mom. At this point, Democrats need to gather in a top secret meeting and cast ballots for or against Biden being the nominee. All 260 elected Congress members. If he doesn't clear 50%, he should drop out. I think that's a fair idea, right? You get all of the House members together. You get all of the senators together. You have it be an anonymous ballot because they're all a bunch of fucking cowards who don't want to write their name on anything or publicly come out and state their actually held positions. So do it anonymously. Do it anonymously. Have them all cast a vote. Should Biden stay in? Should he drop out? And then everybody abides by whatever the results are of that. I am almost 100% certain that if they did that, that probably like 80 to 90% of elected Democrats would say he should drop out. If it was anonymous, they would say that. So, listen, guys, I don't know what's going to happen from here. Biden is being stubborn as hell. His ego is inflated, as much as it could possibly be. And I really don't know what's going to happen. I just don't. It seems like the dam is breaking. It seems like things are changing rapidly. Maybe it's just going to take the NATO leaders leaving. Maybe that was an idea that was floated by Ryan. That could be, that could be true. Maybe the NATO leaders leave and then suddenly everybody turns against him. I don't know if it hasn't broken so far. What could possibly change Biden's mind when he has Jill Biden and Hunter Biden in his ear telling him everything's fine, the polls are wrong, right? I mean, it's just amazing, guys. It is amazing that we have put ourselves in this position, or that we've been put in this position, really, I think is a more accurate way to say it. If Joe Biden decides to stay in the race, I think Democrats up and down the ballot are absolutely fucked. And they're going to have nobody to blame but themselves.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying